he looked over all my records and said, well, without any tests, he says, you couldn't have Lyme disease because you've already taken 14 days of doxycycline. So you really should just go home and get plenty of rest and try not to think of yourself as a sick person. And I thought, great advice, right?
Hey guys, this is Dr. G. Awesome. We have Holly here, the author of the Healer Within. So excited because she has so much to share. And lately, as you know, my message has really been, diet and exercise is wonderful and profoundly necessary and fundamental, but there's so much more to it. And so the title, I said, resiliency versus resistance, I think is apropos, is really come to home. But there's Holly. How you doing, Holly?
Okay. Hi. Thanks for having me.
Oh, wonderful. So when I saw your book, not only was I utterly flattered that you had mentioned my name, but your book is profound in such a way that it really touches on what message I've been kind of receiving lately is, yes, there's ways to heal. And we could look at the things we could grasp, like diet, exercise, all that. But then there's so much more. But can you tell us a little bit about your story?
Well, I got sick in 2012, like I say in the book, and it happened just overnight. I was a otherwise healthy person, in my opinion. I ran. I was never overweight. And I had 2 young kids at the time. And to be honest, my life was kind of stressful at that time. And like most people, I was juggling at work and just all these things at once. And I felt really run down. And then I had a fairly benign health event, and I went to the urgent care, and they gave me an antibiotic. And it was, relatively common antibiotic. It wasn't like Cipro or anything that you associate with problems. And I took the antibiotic, and within a day, I was finding that I had extreme joint pain, and boy, I must have the flu or something worse. I didn't know what was going on, but I did notice that no one else in my family was getting what I had. And so I was alarmed. So I started going to as everybody else who goes through Lyme kind of experiences, I started going to doctors, and I'd go through all the, the rigmarole of the blood work, and they wouldn't find anything, and they'd send me home sick. And I just kept getting perpetually sicker until eventually I ended up completely bedridden at 36 years old with 2 kids in diapers. And I had to move in with my mom and dad about 4 states away. We were in Michigan at the time, and they were in New York. My husband, he still has a very demanding job. And so he would be traveling, and I just needed help around the clock. So I had to move in with my parents. For him to see me, he'd have to drive 4 states on weekends. And once I got to my mom and dad's house, I continued to go to doctors, and they couldn't find anything wrong with me. And I was the sickest person you can imagine. I could barely walk to my mailbox and back. My mom was making me meals. And yet I go to the doctor, and they would act like there's nothing wrong with you. Not just act like, they would tell me that. Well, I had in my mind, I knew I'd been bitten by a tick several years before when I was running. And I had the classic bullseye rash on my left bicep. And I'd gone to the doctor for that. And he looked at it and felt it was fading, said, don't worry about it. You don't have Lyme. And at the time, I was too young to push him. I didn't have the confidence. You always feel like doctors know best, right? And I didn't have any experience of being sick. I was always healthy. So that went on with my life. But I kept thinking in the back of my head when I was having all these weird symptoms, maybe I had Lyme disease, because when I do the research online, my symptoms matched. So went to the doctor, they tested me for Lyme, came back negative. Yada, yada, yada. Months later, I went back to another infectious disease doctor, and I asked her to test me again. And finally, I tested positive for Lyme. So it took me over a year to test positively for Lyme disease. And, you know, by the time you're sick for that amount of time with an infection, or, you know, you're a disaster. How does anybody treat you at that point? Where do you even start? I started with antibiotics, and the antibiotics made me sicker. Eventually, I just thought I was going to die. I had to quit the antibiotics. And at that point, nobody knew what to do with me. I went to the Cleveland Clinic, and the top infectious disease doctor at the Cleveland Clinic, he looked over all my records and said, well, without any tests, he says, you couldn't have Lyme disease because you've already taken 14 days of doxycycline. So you really should just go home and get plenty of rest and try not to think of yourself as a sick person. And I thought, great advice, right? Only it's so easy to talk yourself out of a chronic and debilitating, you know, problem. But that's the problem with Lyme disease, is that I look just like this when I was fully sick. And so the doctors look at you and they think, how sick could you be, right? You have no idea. It's an invisible disease, and it's really unique to Lyme disease. There aren't many other diseases like that where you're chronically sick and you can't function. People look at you like you're a faker, you know, you're just not trying hard enough. And you know, it was a true nightmare. So I had to align myself with holistic practitioners and functional medicine, and that's when I slowly started to come around. But it was a long process road.
Right, right. So where did you start? I mean, here you are, you're sick.
Yeah.
You have no support of the doctors. I mean, of course you have your family, but where did you begin? Like, how did you find the energy, the strength to pursue?
That's a good question, but it's, you know, when you're a parent and you know going through what you're going through when you have kids, quitting's not an option, right? I would lay in bed and think, I got to see my kids grow up and they're going to need me. And I would think about how my parents were taking care of me when I was sick. I like, you know, you're never at an age where you don't need your family help. And I just had to get better for my kids. And so I thought, you know, I'm going to figure this out. And so I'd spend all my time in bed researching on my iPad. I just started chiseling away. I didn't know what to do. I kind of just took a basic fundamental approach.
But you're an attorney at this point. Are you still practicing law, or?
No, I'm not. I haven't been back to work since I got sick. So now I've kind of just devoted my time, and I'm just coming out of being sick. I'm still not perfect. It's like coming out of an underground bunker where you almost can't even, if I have good days, I feel like I want to pinch myself. Is this really happening? When's the other shoe going to drop? Am I going to get sick again? Yeah, I'm kind of feeling out the water still. So it makes me nervous to dive back into anything that's too stressful.
We always talk about that there's no finish lines, that you're never like, oh, you succeeded. This is always an ongoing, as like anything with life, right? An ongoing challenge, or an ongoing struggle, or an ongoing goodness too. I mean, depending on how you look at things, right?
That's right. And people will always ask me. In fact, people would ask me when I was sick, "Are you going to get better?" And I would think, oh, I hope I am. But I talk about that in my book, that when people ask, "Are you better yet?" and being better, right, is such a weird thing, because when do you really reach that point? I keep working every day and honing what I do and just keep every day. You know, it's like a slow grind trying to improve. So that's how it's been from the start.
And you said something that you had read on the internet that was really profound when we were talking just before, that you were faking wellness, which
Right.
is
Yep.
really,
Absolutely.
really speaks to me.
Like I said, with Lyme disease, it's such a strange thing that family and friends and doctors, they will straight to your face act like you are faking your symptoms because they can't find anything diagnostically wrong with you. And I said I wasn't faking being sick, I was faking being well. Anytime I had to go to a family function, or I remember going to my cousin's wedding, I felt like a zombie. I would get dressed up and I would take a nice picture and I looked great in the picture. I should show you the picture at my cousin's wedding when I was in the thick of it. I looked great. And I remember that day though, when I look at that photo, all I see is pain and suffering. Because I remember not being able to carry conversations, feeling weak, just hurting everywhere. And if you haven't gone through it, it's hard to understand. But you can't judge a book by its cover. You don't know what someone's going through by how they look on the outside by any stretch.
I think that's pretty deep because I think that applies to most of us as we spend our lives in this internal battle that we can't share with the world, so to speak, because
Right?
like you said, you just don't want to bring people down all the time, your spouse, your husband, your kids. So
Right.
you have to kind of suck it up. I hate to use that because that's such a
That,
cliche.
right. That's the thing with these chronic diseases like Lyme and MS, is that you don't ever get a break from being sick. It's a possible life sentence. You don't know. And it's every day, day in, day out. You go to bed with it, you wake up with it. And I often say this to my husband. I say, if you have a bad day at work, you could plan a vacation to regroup, right? You got the weekend off. You don't get any time off from being sick. It's nonstop. And after a while, when you're sick, day in, day out, year after year, the people around you don't want to hear it anymore, right? Because it's depressing. And I don't blame them for not wanting to listen to somebody
No,
complain
no,
about how
I don't
sick they
blame them either. I don't blame them either.
are. Right.
So let me take you back a little bit. So I mean, you're really sick. You're not practicing now. I mean, and you haven't any help with the doctor. So you had two choices. You could either kind of swallow or in your squalor, kind of live like in that way, or choose to take a different step. But you chose to take a different step. So what did you do?
Well, first of all, I knew instinctively, I just felt instinctively that I had to get well using natural remedies. I just instinctively am distrustful of pharmaceutical medicine. And I didn't want to be reliant upon a medicine. That freaked me out. So I just started to look for natural ways to get better. And I'll tell you one thing. I know the naturopath I found initially was Jennifer Serzant from Quebec. She really helped me. She got me on the right path with herbs and diet. But she would always tell me, she'd say, get off gluten and really focus on your diet. And I always would think, diet didn't get me sick. So it's not like I eat that poorly. And I'd have like a tuna fish sandwich with bread. And I didn't see the harm in it. And so I'd always tell her, oh yeah, I'm eating well. I would cut back on gluten, but I wouldn't eliminate it completely. And I wasn't, I was improving, but I wasn't really, making significant improvements. And so I realized, I'm in trouble if I don't turn this around, because I am non-functioning completely, pretty much. I'm not getting worse, but I'm not, I wasn't making the progress that I should have been. And so I started to think more about diet. And I thought, is she right? am I doing this wrong? And that's when I found walls, that TEDx talk at first. And I thought, you know what? I'm either going to live or die, but I'm going to die trying. So this diet thing's going to work. If it could reverse MS in Dr. Walls, maybe it's going to help me with Lyme. And I knew I had autoimmune problems. I had vasculitis, which protects your blood vessels, and also Raynaud's and thyroid problem. So I dove into Walls and really committed. I thought, I'm going to stick to this for 6 weeks. I'm really going to commit for those 6 weeks and see how far I can get. And would you believe, after 6 weeks on Walls, my joint pain was gone. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is earth shattering to me. It was all I needed. I wasn't healed. I had a long, long, long way to go. But I couldn't believe, for the first time, I'd look at my knuckles and they weren't swollen and red. And that's when I thought, wow, this is not a joke. And my naturopath had been telling me all along, get serious about diet. But I didn't, till I found Walls, and yeah, she really tees it up for you with the science and explains it. And I was like, I get it. Now I know when I eat potato chips, what's going on in my body. So I'm not going to eat that stuff.
So where did you start with Walls? 1, 2, 3?
Yeah, I wasn't perfect with Walls, but what I did do for those first 6 weeks, I was perfect about being off of gluten and really limiting my grains. Right now, I'm middle for Walls. I don't do the top, the third level.
And the research shows that neither 1, level 2, or 3, depends on the person. One may not be better than the other.
Right, and I'll fluctuate. Sometimes if I start having symptoms, if I don't stick to it, my symptoms will creep back. So like she says, it's not a cure. It's a lifestyle. I don't consider that a diet, what she proposes.
Right.
But I think it's how we all should eat. I think it's how I advocate everyone in my family. When they have any sort of problem, I ask them, what are you eating? You're eating bread, you're eating pizza. And rarely do they believe me, but.
Right. So tell me about the family dynamics. So you have, of course, you're married and you have 2 children.
2 children, right? And it was really stressful. Obviously, you can imagine and you understand.
Yeah.
Extremely stressful on our family because mom is like the center of the family,
Of
the
course,
universe,
of course,
for the kids, and
of course.
so it was traumatic, and that's another aspect. And we talked about this before we started, is the traumatic component of being sick. It's not just that you're sick, you almost develop post-traumatic stress from it. It's really a traumatic event. It's you literally had your life stolen from you. Is there anything worse than that, right? Other than death or your child, and something bad happened to your child. So you're always, even as you improve, at least me, always anxious about, is this going to come back? I always, that's one problem, worrying and your what if all the time in your head.
The future, tough
Right.
thing in the present.
Right.
And so the Walls, I mean, you've done so many things in the book. So Walls, but then you also did mats, in which you were explain some of the other things you were doing, because you seem to cover so many modalities.
I didn't leave any stone unturned. So
No.
I would just go out and research. If somebody said something helped, I would look into it and I'd consider it. And if it seemed legit, I would try it. So like a Rife machine, I tried Rife. That didn't do much for me.
Explain what Rife is.
It's frequency. It's the concept that certain frequencies will kill infections in the body. So you hold on to these rods, and an electrical current comes through, and it penetrates the body, and it meets the currency or frequency level of that infection, and so it'll knock it out. I'm not
theoretically.
doing the science justice behind that, but
No,
that's,
but theoretically, you're absolutely right. That's what they're talking about.
yeah.
All
So
right, so
it sounds like it'll work, but
you know what? I've tried so many things. I've bee stings, the cow brain. I mean, I would like you. I just kept trying and trying and trying. So tell me what some other things that you have done.
the salt sea protocol, which I think in hindsight was pretty dangerous, where you take high amounts of salt and then high amounts of sea at the same time. I did IVs of vitamins. I did IVs of ozone. I bought a PEMF mat, pulsed electromagnetic frequency mat.
Which are not cheap.
Not cheap. Nothing's cheap, right?
Nothing's cheap.
And to be honest, the most powerful tool was the cheapest tool, was that $19 Walls book that I bought. And today, so now it's all I focus on is what I'm eating and herbal protocols, because I found herbals to be very, very incredibly powerful.
Explain a little bit of that. What type of herbal protocols you
I've tried so many, I can't even tell you one or the other, but for example, I'll just talk to you real quick about insomnia. I had really intense insomnia for 2 years, and I thought I was going to die from the insomnia. It was so bad. I tapped out and I went to the doctor to get prescription medication for it, which in hindsight was a mistake because it made my insomnia 100 times worse. And finally, after some testing with my functional medicine doctor, it was clear that my cortisol levels were really high at night when they should be low. And then in the morning when they should be raising or increasing to wake you up, mine were not where they should be. So I started taking ashwagandha and holy basil and different things at night that would help my cortisol levels. And it took a little bit, but those herbals restored my circadian rhythm. That and exercise. I know you guys talk about going to the gym. I hadn't been really working out because I was so tired all the time. And you think that when you're tired, and you've said this before, you feel like you're tired, so you want to lay down and sleep. But just because you feel like it doesn't mean that's the best thing for you to be doing, right? And so I would say herbs. I realized the true power of the herbs with my insomnia helped me correct that. But also the exercise was a huge component.
what type of move? I call it movement now because people are like, well, I don't want to lift weights, so I don't want to do that. And I'm like, well, you don't have to, but you have to have some form of movement. So
Right.
so what are you doing, Holly? Like what's I know
I started, and really, there's people out there that they feel like they can't do anything. That's how I felt. I mean, I was really bedridden. So anything you can do, resistance training in particular, I'm not saying get out of breath because I think that's counterproductive, especially if you have chronic fatigue syndrome.
right.
You can hurt yourself.
Right.
But I started where I was, and I was just gentle with myself, and I would pat myself on the back whenever I did it, because I thought, I mean, if anybody else could understand how I felt going in to, go into the pool to do my little exercises, they'd be shocked. Most days I thought they'd be taking me out in an ambulance. And that's the truth. I can so many days driving to the gym thinking, well, there's a lifeguard there. So if you die or something happens, they can fish you out. But I gotta move.
I'm a strong believer in it. We have to move. We have to do it in a safe way.
Safe way, right?
And right, my body lies to me all the time. I think I can't do it. But if I move a bit, then I have more energy. But the problem is, as you said, if you're out of breath and you have chronic fatigue, and now you're really destroying your, so I always talk about fatigue management. So I mean, you touched on that very nicely, because there's a point where you can overdo it.
It's a very fine line, and you have to be able to protect it. But I find that if you do things like swimming or weight training, not anything heavy, just do what you can and you'll build up. But like you said, I can't tell you how many times I did not, I just was exhausted and didn't feel like going out and doing anything. And then after I did it, wow, now I can get through my day. I can make dinner for the kids, where otherwise I'd have been in bed for the whole rest of the day.
Yes. Good point, because that's exactly how I feel. I mean, there's
Yeah,
been times where I've been like at the gym where I got tears in my eyes. I know I got to get done. Now, like you said, it's a fine line between overdoing and doing it, but you
right,
have to, I figured I have to do something. And I have
right,
to do something like 5 days, 4 to 6 days a week.
right.
Something.
Yeah, and I remember watching one of your videos one day when I hadn't slept all night and I was exhausted, and I thought, this was back when I was trying to get my sleep patterns corrected. And you said that you didn't sleep well that night, but you were still going to go to the gym. And I thought, I got to start moving. And exercise was really critical step. And every
Well,
time you exercise and make that point, you make more mitochondria. That's what you need.
awesome. Well said. Absolutely. And the thing with sleep, and Dr. Charlin made it clear to me, and actually Dr. Walls, and now a bunch of other authors. I've been taking coursework with the Institute of Functional Medicine, and sleep is absolutely fundamentally key. And you know
Mhm.
that, because how horrible you felt when you miss a night's sleep. How horrible I feel when I miss a night's sleep.
It's everything, right? It's the
It's
bottom
everything.
layer. It's what you build the house on, right? So,
Amen. See, now I'm also involved in the kind of the weightlifting, powerlifting community, and these guys and gals are strong as all get out, but they know is so they had to prioritize things: train, eat, sleep. And so, what priority do they put them in? Sleep first, eat second, train last. So, sleep, nutrition. Now you exercise, you move, right?
correct. And right, because when you sleep, that's when everything heals. So you could do all the best things during the day to nourish your body. If you don't sleep and let give your body the chance to absorb those nutrients and heal, but it's not going to work.
Well said. Perfectly said. Well, I'm not going to keep you too long because I know you got a bus coming with your children. But let me just put you back on this. But this is Holly's book. I highly recommend it. You could get it on Holly. I guess you get it on Amazon. I'm not. Is that the best place?
Yeah, Amazon, and I also have a website, but that just links you to Amazon. But my website is thehealerwithin.me.
Thehealerwithin.me. Now you also do consultations. You also work with patients still.
I offer that, but mostly, if anybody has questions or they, just send me an email. I'm happy to talk to anybody.
Well, the book is a very, very nice read. It's a quick read, and it's fundamentally reverberates with my story, and so I know it's going to reverberate for the rest of the community. So, I highly encourage. I purchased. Well, you sent me a copy, but then I went out and I purchased a copy on Kindle because it's just easier sometimes for me if I'm in the car or I'm in my
Right.
phone. Take a look at it. So it's available in a couple different forms, but I also like paper, but I'd like to have something in my hand. So
That's how I am too. I love a nice book.
yeah, and I could highlight, I could mark it, I could
Right.
scratch it, I could fold pages. Where
Right.
my son, of course, in college, everything's video and on the computer. I'm like, yeah, I need
They
that.
don't know what books are anymore. So
They really
everything's,
don't. It's crazy. I want to scratch it and move it and
yeah.
highlight 3 different colors. And but Holly, you know what? Thank you so much for coming on, and thank you so much for having the courage to look beyond. Because I always talk about the fact that I went through all my medical training, I went through all that, and I had to go through a de-learning period in order to relearn. And Dr.
Right.
Walls talks about it, and a lot of the authors and a lot of the fine doctors realize, it wasn't more than 50 years ago they were recommending cigarettes to pregnant women.
Right.
So So the fact that they had no idea about the Lyme disease, and they have very little idea about nutrition and chronic disease. I mean, it's just, unfortunately, it's what it is.
It is. It is.
Is-
And doctors are doing their best. And yeah, I kind of went through a period where I was hostile with doctors, but a lot of the stuff we just don't know yet. And all the research with like the microbiome, and I find it fascinating because it's like we're on the precipice of this new frontier, figuring out almost everything has a tie to your gut. And,
I'm going to have Dr. Dannenberg on. We're going to talk about that, but I had a chance to speak with Dr. Walsh 20 years ago, and we had a long conversation. At the end of the conversation, she said it's all about the biome. This is 20 years ago, so she was way ahead of her time.
Way ahead. Yeah.
And that's exactly what we're finding. If your biome isn't right, your mental attitude is right, your depression is not right. I mean, nothing's right. All disease begins in the gut, right?
Right. And I know we got to go, but that was one thing I noticed as a teenager. I felt like my health wasn't even good then. And it was because of how I ate. I look back on how I was raised, and nobody knew about the stuff. We lived on Wonder Bread and Chef Boyardee and steak gums and Captain Crunch.
I'm with you 100%. Where'd you grow up?
Just south of Buffalo, New York, near Chautauqua Lake.
That's so funny because I grew up south of Buffalo in Springville and Boston and then Hamburg, and I'm near the
chicken
Bill
wings,
chicken wings and pizza and back end. Yeah, I miss beef on wick, but I can't eat beef on wick. All right, I'm going to give you the last word because what your message rather profound. What advice would you have to somebody was in your boat, that's sick, and the doctors, and all they went down that road and they've hit walls? What's your advice, if you could, just in a couple minutes?
My advice is stick to walls. Don't expect immediate results, and just every day, they say that 1% rule. Every day, try to get a little bit better and a little bit better with your protocol. Just keep honing and chiseling away and stick with it, because the results will come. You just have to keep at it every day. Just get up and say, God, I'm grateful to be alive. I'm going to live another day. I can work on this. And there's a Zen proverb in my book that says, if you're facing the right direction, all you need to do is keep walking. That's walls. Stick to walls. Get with a good herbal protocol. Find a functional medicine practitioner if you need help, but you can do it. There's so much power within you with what you eat every day. If you just really stay disciplined and stick with it. Just every day, try to get a little bit better and be forgiving of yourself, because you're gonna eat a cookie every once in a while. So just get back on the horse.
Holly, I love your book, The Healer Within. We can find it on Amazon. I encourage everybody to grab a copy. It's just a quick, nice, energetic read. Even to give you a little bit of a boost, a little bit of energy. And I'm just so impressed with you that you're able to just deep down inside say, all right, I'm going to do this. And you did. And you continue to. And we realize there's no finish lines, but you're at it every day. So thank you.
Thank you for having me. And I just want to say too, it's because of people like you that came before me. You were a huge motivator, and you are still a huge motivator to me, because I still have bad days like everybody else. So thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
It goes right to my heart. So thank you. Yeah. You have a good day. Enjoy that family. And
yes.
Just keep at it. And we got to check in with you now and then. I want to see how you continue to improve and how your life continues. I love it.
Sure. I'd love to.
Be well, Holly.
All right. Thanks so much.
Have a good night.